Hi, can you hear me, Roshi and Frank?
Yeah. And Noah, I'm going to switch to earbuds.
Okay. So first, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Firstly, the interpretation. So if you are hearing me in English and you wish to listen in Portuguese or Italian, please click on the interpretation button in the options bar that appears just below this video, the video screen. It looks like a globe. And if you're on a mobile or a tablet using an iOS app or another app, press the More button, which has 3 dots, and select Language Interpretation. And then you should be able to see the Italian and Portuguese translation there. And if you don't see that, you might try restarting the app, or if you're in a browser window, it won't work, so you need to use an app. So now I'll have Claudia say this into the main stream in case there are people listening in the mainstream who are not understanding me. Claudia. So, yeah,
Ciao a tutti, benvenuti agli italiani, siamo un centinaio questa sera. Se c'è ancora qualcuno qui, vi prego di cliccare sull'iconcina del mondo che vedete in basso e selezionare italiano se volete ascoltare la traduzione in italiano. Grazie a tutti, buona serata.
And Fabio.
Pessoal, boa tarde, sejam bem-vindos. Nesse canal de áudio você vai escutar só as falas em inglês. Para escutar a tradução da Giane em português, é só clicar no botão onde está escrito Interpretação, na parte de baixo da tela do Zoom. E ali você escolhe português. Para fazer perguntas, se você fala inglês, pode perguntar diretamente depois usando o botão de levantar a mão. Ou então você pode enviar sua pergunta por escrito usando o botão QIA. Bom encontro, muito obrigado.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll do it in the break.
There's no break.
Thank you so much, Fabio and Claudia, and to Jeannie, our interpreter for Portuguese. And we're just so grateful for your offering of being able to make these interpretations available. So thank you for the teams. If you have any issues or questions about it, go ahead and chat. You can write me a chat, Upaya Zen Center, the host, or you can write to Wendy Lau Wendy Dinan Lau is helping with the tech, and Joanne Tom is also on, I see. So any of us can help you if you have any issues, or you can write to onlineprograms@upaya.org, and we'll try to figure out how to make things work. So just a few words on the setup. If I see we already have a raised hand. So Alan, we're going to hold on the questions for later. If you have a technical question, please go ahead and chat it to us. And everyone will remain muted. You can choose to show your video or not, but it is really nice, I've heard from the teachers, to be able to see everyone, or as many people as possible. That's how you can get the teachers to give their best, is to show yourself. So please do that if you can. And other than that, I'll just keep it brief because I know we want to get to Roshi and Frank. And just Roshi and Frank, thank you so much for coming time and again to share your life and experience and wisdom. And thank you so much for offering it freely. And as everyone knows, this is a donation-based program. And I just ask all of us who are receiving these teachings, please give generously as you can, so that we can continue to support Frank and Roshi in this time, and Upaya. So thank you for your donations. I'll put the donation link in here. And with that, Roshi and Frank, thank you. Oops, okay, your guys are muted. So I'm gonna ask you to unmute, and I'm gonna unmute Frank and the spotlight here. You're still muted, Roshi. Roshi, you're still muted.
Let's see, Roshi, can you hear us? You're still muted?
I've
There we go.
done it. I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Great. Well,
So,
we just want to add our welcome to everyone. Thank you, Noah, and everybody behind the scenes who makes this so look so easy. That's a lot of work that goes on from the folks at Upaya and our collaborators in Brazil and Italy. So we're very grateful to everyone. And Roshi, I'm very happy to be with you, my old friend. Good to be with you again and to explore this topic of becoming. Yeah, just all my love to you, and let's see what we can learn together today.
dear one, and I want to welcome our friends literally from around the world. It's a great honor for Frank and me to share the little that we know about what becoming is about. And you've heard this many times in the past 2 years. We are in a time, in an era that is historic. 10 years from now, we're going to look back at this time with a great deal of interest in terms of what we learned. And so in the way that Frank and I and Upaya, the way we practice is we begin with a practice and to really get grounded. So I'd like to invite you to sit comfortably and let your attention rest lightly on your breath and your body, your full body. Just allow yourself on the exhale to really drop into the body. And see if you can open yourself to this connection with the earth. Feel the support of the earth. Also feel rooted, feel grounded. And let that stability of the earth really enter your body. Let that stability inhabit your heart and your mind. And see if you can allow yourself to experience the strength of being deeply connected with the earth. And breath deep in your body. Let your attention now move to your feet on the floor, the sensation of the feet on the floor, or the sensation of your sits bones on your cushion or your chair. And again, see if you can allow yourself to come to peace. I'd like to invite all of us to affirm your intention to meet openly and honestly the truth of suffering and also this deep aspiration to end suffering. And there's this feeling of resolve that rises up in the belly when you remember your aspiration. This aspiration, may I awaken, may I truly awaken, so I can be of benefit to others. And see if you can feel that in your body, in the marrow. knowing that this life is really precious. You know, in some Buddhist traditions, they say it's very challenging to obtain a human birth or rebirth. But in any case, whether our lifespan is short or medium or long, or we have multiple lifespans, just allowing yourself to consider the preciousness of being in this body at this time so you can serve deeply. And remember that death is inevitable, that we're all mortal. We don't know how we will die or how we'll actually meet death. It's important to consider the truth of our mortality and let that enter your awareness as a good guide, the inevitability of death. And know the truth of cause and effect. Consequentiality, you know, what we do really matters. And that if we focus all the time on our self-importance or self-pity, that we will experience suffering. And so this practice is about this fundamental generosity of heart. Deep generosity of heart. Expanding our subjectivity in a way that we experience directly interbeing, interconnectedness. And breath deep in the body. Again, strong back, soft front. And whatever good that's arisen for you in these few short minutes that we've practiced together, please dedicate it to the well-being of others. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful to have this pause with you. And you know, these 2 years of the pandemic and of being in a lockdown for a good deal of it, one of the pieces that has been really up for me as a practitioner, but also as a recovering anthropologist, is a talk that I gave, I think it was 1.5 years ago, and it's really stayed with me. In that my perception is we are in a kind of global rite of passage. That is, we have gone through this period of separation from our normal life. And many of us have been thrashed on the threshold. We've really experienced the challenges around what it is to stay with our humanity, our best heart in the midst of these conditions, and also the racism, also the environmental challenges, so much coalescing at this time. And so, you know, it's the whole globe. I mean, it's like Thay's Dharma of interbeing, or Paratantra of interconnectedness, interdependence, and interpenetration. we're really in each other's lives in a powerful way. And we also, many of us have suffered a lot during this period. I mean, in this country alone, something like 9 million people, or 900,000 rather, people have died of COVID. And this means we're talking about millions of people carrying profound grief, which is part of becoming. I mean, grief deeply humanizes in the right circumstances. And I think often also of the work that I did years ago in the field of shamanism, and really exploring the psycho-mental crisis of these healers who would go through, periods of, really intensive initiation, or have basically a mental breakdown, and then being able to reconstitute themselves at a higher level of functionality, where they are bridge people between worlds. And the term that we use for individuals who've gone through this, wounded healer. It's using this psycho-mental crisis as a means to deconstruct or be deconstructed from the conditioning that has characterized so much of our life and our society, that has given rise to deep selfishness and also destructiveness, and where there's a kind of phase shift that goes on that is so profound that we realize that our life's purpose is not to make more bad mischief, but to make good trouble, if you will, to really allow our own capacities as healers, as bridge builders, to come forth. And we're in such a powerful time as we bear witness to the darkness in our world. And also this isolation has given many of us the opportunity to look into our own shadow as well. And hopefully from this, what emerges is what I love Norman Fisher's phrase, this bodhisattva attitude. This capacity to see clearly the truth of suffering, and as well, freedom from suffering. So some years ago, I met a remarkable poet who had been in prison for years. And I want to just tell you a little bit about him. His name is Jimmy Santiago Baca. And he was born in Santa Fe in 1952. And not so long after he was born, he was basically abandoned by his parents. And so he lived with his grandparents for some years. And then he was placed in an orphanage. And he ended up living on the streets. And when he was 21, he was arrested and convicted on charges of drug possession. And he was put in prison. And he served 6 years in prison. And 4 of those years were in isolation. So we're meeting here this really remarkable human being who's been through so much suffering himself, born into a culture of suffering and in a family of suffering, abandoned, and then ending up in prison, also illiterate. And when he was in prison, when he was in lockdown, when he was in isolation, he taught himself to read and write. And during this experience of reading and writing, he discovered parallel worlds, but he also discovered that he was a poet. And he began to share his poetry with the outer world. And as a result of that, finally, when he was released 6 years after being incarcerated, he really began to teach and write and influence many of us with his powerful bodhisattva attitude, which is to go into prisons and to bring this gift into prisons, having been inside himself, working with young Chicanos, Hispanic people, indigenous people, who would be on the streets and giving them the energy and the inspiration for a path forward. And I met Jimmy on paper first, and then we became good friends. And this is the poem that completely electrified me, because I feel that it pertains so much to what we're exploring together now, which is becoming. And I say this because it is not just a straight road through paradise. It really means a powerful transformation through the medium of suffering into some kind of brilliant wisdom, and also where there's hope. So I want to share this poem with you. I want to share it also because my second Zen teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, died recently, just a few weeks ago. And I think about Thich Nhat Hanh and His Holiness the Dalai Lama having been exiled from their countries being, ruined in a certain way, bombed and pillaged and taken apart by others, and how they have turned into, just like Nelson Mandela did, into world healers. And I'd like to dedicate this session that we're in to Thich Nhat Hanh for his courage to become and to be. And also Jimmy Santiago Baca. So let me read this poem for you. He's in his cell, just imagine, in isolation. They turn the water off, so I live without water. They build walls higher, so I live without treetops. They paint the windows black, so I live without sunshine. They lock my cage, so I live without going anywhere. They take each last tear I have. I live without tears. They take my heart and rip it open. I live without heart. They take my life and crush it, so I live without a future. They say I am beastly and fiendish, so I have no friends. They stop up each hope, so I have no passage out of hell. They give me pain, so I live with pain. They give me hate, so I live with my hate. They have changed me, and I am not the same man. They give me no shower, so I live with my smell. They separate me from my brothers, so I live without brothers. Who understands me when I say, this is beautiful? Who understands me when I say, I have found other freedoms? I cannot fly or make something appear in my hand. I cannot make the heavens open or the earth tremble. I can live with myself, and I am amazed at myself, my love, my beauty. I am taken by my failures, astounded by my fears. I am stubborn and childish in the midst of this wreckage of life they incurred. I practice being myself, and I have found parts of myself never dreamed of by me. They were goaded out of me under rocks in my heart. When the walls were built higher, when the water was turned off and the windows painted black, I followed these signs like an old tracker and followed the tracks deeper into myself. Followed the blood-spotted path deeper into the dangerous regions and found so many parts of myself. Who taught me water is not everything and gave me new eyes to see through walls. And when they spoke, sunlight came out of their mouths, and I was laughing at me with them. We laughed like children and made pacts to always be loyal. Who understands me when I say, this is beautiful? Jimmy, really, so powerful. So just as bone and muscle are strengthened when exposed to stress or when broken, and in the right circumstances that are usually internal, they become stronger for having been injured. And I think so much these days also of Archbishop Tutu and something he said about Nelson Mandela in a conference that I moderated, where Archbishop Tutu said, Nelson lacked empathy before he was imprisoned at Robben Island. Now talk about lockdown. And it was in the context of him being brutalized in prison that his empathy opened up completely. What we discover from people like Mandela, also Tutu, also Malala, also Jimmy, Thich Nhat Hanh, His Holiness, that losing our footing, like sliding down this kind of cliff of harm, doesn't have to be a terminal catastrophe. There are gifts, there are strengths, there are experiences in this journey of becoming that have to do with strengthening our character if the circumstances are right for us. So we understand that these incredible challenges that we're facing at the level of race, indigenous peoples, Black people, Asians, the racism in our country, what can we learn? One of the things is to see our own privilege, if we have that, to understand the racism within us, if that is a configuration within our psyche. You know, Iris Murdoch wrote a really powerful piece in her book, The Sovereignty of Good. And she defined humility as selfless respect for reality. Selfless respect for reality. And she wrote, she says, you know, our picture of ourselves has just become too grand. And this is this issue of entitlement and privilege that staunches, that prevents, that inhibits becoming. And I learned so much, as Frank did also, sitting at the bedside of dying people. and being with caregivers and doing this close work with those who are dying and those who were giving care really showed me how serious the cost of suffering can be for patient as well as caregiver, but also even within that, there can be redemption. So in thinking about the challenges of becoming, I recall the work of Dabrowski, who's a Polish psychiatrist and psychologist, who in the, I think it was the 60s or 70s, anyway, he proposed this really powerful idea of this notion of personality development that is predicated on disintegration, positive disintegration. So this was what Dabrowski proposed, and years later, Julian Silverman took that and went into the mental hospital up in Sonoma with this notion in mind. Also, John Weir Perry, the Jungian, started Diathesis, STAN, Spiritual Emergency Network, understanding that the experience of coming apart, of disintegration, can actually be generative. And that this is a transformational approach to psychological growth that are based on this notion that crises are important for personal maturation. And this is the very core of the vision of what a rite of passage is about. It is about generating becoming, or the psychomental crisis of the shaman, or what Dabrowski, Silverman, and others saw so clearly was the hero's journey involves often an encounter with hell, with coming apart, with dismemberment. And this is also the story of the Buddha, and also the story of Christ, 40 years in the desert. And it's very close to what we know in complex adaptive systems theory, that is living systems that break down can actually reorganize themselves at a higher and more robust level if they learn from the breakdown. Bring our attention to it. So I have more that I want to share in this regard. Frank, is it okay if I take just a few more minutes? Where is he? Franco?
Go ahead. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay. He's like, you didn't give me the signal. Just a few more minutes.
Please.
You know, I worked as an anthropologist in Mali, among other places, and I observed this experience of positive disintegration as a kind of core dynamic in the Dogon culture where I did field work, where there's an initiation for the entire culture that happens once every 53 to 60 years. It's just incredible. And this powerful phase shift in Dogon culture is about the death of society and culture and its rebirth. And years later, I remember sitting rather in the falaise, in this sort of cliff face, under an overhang. It was really hot in the southern Sahara. And I remember I had this thought, wow, the rites of passage have been sterilized out of Western culture. And now people seek these kind of edge experiences that are really dangerous, but without the context of the sacred. And in this regard, I think of my friend, and Frank's friend, Joanna Macy, who said so clearly in a recent teaching she gave at Upaya, we are in sacred time. It's a hard time, but it is a sacred time. It is a time where we are called to awaken, to become, and not to turn away from the truth of suffering. Thich Nhat Hanh shares this wisdom when he says, no mud, no lotus. You know, being in the midst of the war in Vietnam, and also without his exile, his Dharma could not have reached so many people as it has today. And now we see that this pandemic, we realize it's in its fifth surge. The climate issues, the race, the social, the political churn we've been witness to. How do we as individuals touch the truth of suffering outside of us, but know we're not separate from it at all? And that we're called to actually bear witness to this truth of suffering. So this time we're in, as Joanna has so clearly stated, I look on, as hard as it is, as a deep and sacred time. And that becoming means that we do not turn away, bypass, hide from the incredible difficulties that not only many of us are facing as individuals, but that are being faced by climate refugees fleeing from climate and war, from those who have lost loved ones in the course of this pandemic, from the rampant racism in our country, and to understand that this darkness has something so important to teach us. And finally, I just want to share some words from my friend Rebecca Solnit. She's recently wrote, "The unknown," what my good beloved teacher Bernie Glassman, being with not knowing, the unknown need not be turned into the known through false divination or the projection of grim political or ideological narratives. And then Rebecca says, really, it's a celebration of darkness. We're in a kind of celebration of darkness right now. And we choose not to close our eyes, but to look deeply into that darkness. So thank you, my beloved Frank.
There we are. Okay, thank you, Roshi. Beautiful. And I love that poem of Jimmy Baca's. Just it gets me every time. Well, I'm feeling gentle this morning, actually. And I want us to sit again for a little bit. And as a guide to that, I have a video that we're going to queue up in a second by Thich Nhat Hanh, because both of us want to honor him, this great being, this incredible teacher. And I thought, we can settle in here and concentrate a bit here. That would be good before we go too much further. But one of the things I want to add is that usually when we think about concentration, we speak about effort. And we think about a balance of effort. And for most people, that means applying more or less physical effort or mental effort. But this morning, I want to suggest that instead we consider finding that balance between relaxation and interest. Relaxation isn't the goal of our meditation practice, of course, but a relaxed body and heart and mind, it's really supportive of mindful awareness. So I chose just a little segment of a short video by Thich Nhat Hanh that I thought would be useful for us to take a look at. So Noah, can we show that video now? Just make it full screen if you can.
Oh, I asked you about that and I didn't see. I didn't get it. Let me go look in the email.
Oh, if we didn't get it, it's okay. It's okay. We'll just do a little short practice here. So let's just settle in again to our bodies, hearts, and minds. Really bringing forward this quality of relaxation and ease in our practice, and letting ourselves be curious. Be really curious. Maybe I like to ask myself 3 questions when I practice. Maybe they'll be helpful to you. The first one is just simply, am I aware? Am I aware in this moment? Am I aware? Well, of course I am. I'm aware. It doesn't have to be something special. Just notice that. Am I aware? I mean, try and ask yourself to not be aware. It's not possible. So am I aware? And the second question I ask regularly is, well, what am I aware of? What am I aware of? What objects or sensations or thoughts are occurring in this body, mind, and heart? So what am I aware of? And then the third question I regularly bring into my practice is, how am I aware? How am I aware? What's the attitude of my mind? What's the relationship I have with the objects of my awareness? What is my awareness clear, bright? Or is it occluded in some way? Awareness, mindfulness is not enough. We have to really investigate and see. So am I aware? What am I aware of? And how am I aware? What's my relationship to what's occurring? Is something occluding the awareness, or is it bright and clear? So you can just notice those things as you practice here for just a few minutes. Very gently. Relaxing. Finding a balance between relaxation and interest. Very simple. Sitting down, resting, doing nothing in particular.
Frank, I have the video if you'd like to play that.
Yeah, let's show that now, actually, so people can enjoy that as well.
Sitting also can be very enjoyable. Sitting and doing nothing. Just enjoying the sitting, be enjoying your breathing, and feel that you are alive. The president of South Africa, Mr. Nelson Mandela, visited France some time ago. And when the press asked him what he would like to do the most, he said, what I want to do the most is just to sit down and doing nothing. Since the time I was released from prison, he said, I have not had a chance to sit down and to do nothing. For him, sitting down and doing nothing is great. He could not afford to do it. Among the monks who are there today, there is a very young monk of 17 years old. He came from South Africa. And I told him to enjoy sitting for his president. So sitting meditation is not to become someone else, something else. It's not a struggle. You just enjoy your sitting. Sit and become aware that you are there alive. To be alive is already a miracle. And if you can touch the fact that you are there alive, that is already enlightenment. because many people around us, they live the daily life, but they are not truly alive. They always run. They are not capable of dwelling in the present moment and touch the wonders of life that are available in the here and the now.
Let's just continue our practice for a moment more. Sitting and being alive. I was struck by Roshi's comments about disintegration. The poet says, apprentice yourself to the curve of your own disappearance. You know, yesterday I was speaking with an old friend, and she and I, many years ago, started a preschool together. And we would sometimes take these young 3- and 5-year-olds out into the woods and ask them to find dead things. And they loved the game, actually. They would happily collect fallen leaves and broken branches and rusty old car parts and occasionally the bones of a crow or a small animal, and then they'd bring them back. And we'd lay them all out on a blue tarp, and they would begin to speak about them. And at that really young age, these children had very little fear, actually, but they had a lot of curiosity, actually. They were very relaxed and curious. And it was kind of interesting to watch them take up these objects and roll them between their fingers or smell them, exploring what dead things really are in a close-up personal way. And then they'd tell us about it, and they sometimes had these incredible stories, actually. They'd craft something about the history of an object and how this old car part was something that fell from a spaceship passing over the earth, or how this leaf was a blanket for a mouse during the winter, and when summer came, it didn't need it anymore. And I remember one little girl saying, I think the leaves that fall are very kind. They make room for the new ones to grow. She said it would be really sad if trees couldn't grow leaves. When we think about anicca, when we think about impermanence, we emphasize the loss side of the equation, but I think anicca, or impermanence, is better understood as the law of change and becoming, actually. And these two related principles, they provide a kind of balance and harmony. There's constant dissolving, disintegration, as Roshi was talking about, and there's also constant becoming. We are at once here and disappearing. We are at once here and becoming. Usually we speak about becoming as this process of development, right? And usually it's about creating a sense of self, which is the result of our history and our conditions, or our achievements or accomplishments. But what spiritual work does, what awareness practice does for us, it opens a door to a deeper contact with being. And it's a way of becoming our most essential nature. And one really important doorway that practice opens for us is the doorway of impermanence. Impermanence isn't the cause of our suffering, clinging in ignorance to the cause of our suffering. But some of us, we really experience impermanence rather as kind of frustrating, personally frustrating, like shouldn't be happening to us. And no matter how hard we try for things to be permanent, it doesn't work out that way. And acknowledging that truth doesn't make us failures or pessimists. It just helps us to see what's true. Impermanence is not the enemy. We rely on impermanence. You know, that cold you have today, it won't last forever. And those really boring virtual dinner parties that you've been invited to, they will eventually come to an end. Dictatorships crumble. Even great trees in the forest burn so that new ones can be born. You know, I love impermanence. You know, without it, my granddaughter couldn't grow up to be an artist or activist. What's interesting to me about this, though, is that while we all agree that everything's changing, right? Seasons come and go, relationships begin and end, each of us are born and die. But what's curious to me is that we like to think of ourselves as a solid thing moving through a changing world. I mean, in effect, what we're saying is everything is changing except me. I'm the one, exception to that rule. And this is a really painful perspective to hold. It's like we try and pull ourselves out of the river of change, climb up onto the riverbank, and find some place where we think we can sit permanently and watch the world flow by. But when we do this, it's no surprise that we find ourselves feeling isolated or separate or cut off from each other. And from this constant unfolding, this constant becoming of reality. It's not change that's the problem, but our misperception of impermanence. Impermanence and becoming their partners. Thich Nhat Hanh might have said they inter-are. Becoming is continuous, right? It's happening not only in the individual level of consciousness, but also on the collective level. And how we meet what's changing, both inwardly and outwardly, on a moment-to-moment basis in our hearts and minds, well, it affects the quality of our individual becoming and the way the world we live in is created. And if we understand this, we can be a conscious participant in that creation. But the problem, at least in my life, is that sometimes I can be really strongly identified with my established habits and my psychological patterns, and they're really hard to uproot. And to me, that's why spiritual practice and awareness practice always has to include an emphasis on the relationship between compassion and equanimity, strong back, soft front, and between love and emptiness. As I watch my own life and I experience the depth of practice, I see that love is the kind of active ingredient that both supports us and supports manifestation in the world. I mean, how do things come out of emptiness? I think the driving force is love. So the manifestation or the wise becoming is driven by love. But also love dissolves obstacles that obscure our clear seeing. And when those obscurations are recognized, seen through, we naturally open to our unselfishness, to the boundlessness, to the nature of our nature. And as Roshi was suggesting, as we transform individually, it helps us to transform globally, right? It helps us to undo the delusions of racism and sexism and the mad idea of our dominance over nature. And it helps us to unravel the contractedness and the tightness around our hearts and relax our sense of separateness. I'm in my 70s now. I'm aging. That's a fact of life. And I can just become old, or I can age wisely, kindly. When I was younger, I built things, organizations and communities and movements, and a very healthy sense of ego. These days, I'm more engaged in the movement toward the embodiment of being. It feels like age-appropriate work. I am becoming anew. I am becoming anew. And I think as we align with being, we become freer from our desires, from our constructed personality. And being oneself, being one's essence, is the fulfillment. It's not that you want to awaken to your essence so that you can get something else. Some of you know I suffered some strokes a while back, and I have a loss of vision. I don't see very well. Lost about half my vision, so I can't drive anymore. So I have to walk everywhere. And sometimes I feel like Jimmy Vaca, They took away my car, so I walk. But what this does is it affords me this opportunity to look into people's eyes more, to say hello to people that I pass, and to notice and stop and play with small children and to be kind. There isn't a lot that's undone in my life, actually. But I'm still doing. But I notice that my doing is more filled with being these days. And so I want to continue to age consciously. And that requires attention to what I'm becoming. These days, I don't think of myself as a teacher very much. I think of myself as a kind old uncle. Maybe Roshi, maybe grandmother's heart is finally infusing my life and practice. I don't want to say much more, but I want to just remind us kind of what Roshi was calling out, which is that right now the world is calling on us to begin again. There's this quote that's attributed to the Buddha that says, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. And I've looked for evidence of the Buddha saying that, and I've never found it. But my friend Jack Kornfield, he said it. So I thought there's still truth in it, even if the Buddha didn't say it. So when I'm practicing, like when we were just practicing, I try to remember that, inhaling, we take in the fact that there's life to receive. And exhaling, we remember that we have something to give. And no matter who you are or where you are or what you've done or what's been done to you, we all have been given to. And we all have things to give. So these two words, begin again. That's what the world's asking of us, begin again. And to me, they are the single best meditation instructions I ever received. Because there's always a renewing of our awareness. There's always a becoming again and again. It's at the heart of our practice. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm always losing my center, my ground. And my practice is about returning and about the way I return. Einstein is said to have said, I don't know, that no problem can be resolved at the same level of consciousness that created it, either individually or collectively. So how do we wisely address the problems from a different level of consciousness than the one that created it? For me, I think we have to remember our natural awareness. We need to inquire into not just the content of our distracted minds. That's generally not so important, actually. We have to remember, I'm aware. We have to ask, what am I aware of? And we have to ask, how am I aware? What's the attitude of mind? What's my relationship to what's occurring? And I think this relaxed, discerning quality of awareness helps us to identify the growth of habits and patterns that are not so helpful, and the growth of patterns and habits that are wholesome. Allow us to become all that we are. That's enough. I don't want to say more, but I want to talk to you all. I want to find out what's on your hearts and minds. And so, maybe we could take a little bit of time to, if you have a comment or a question about what Roshi and I have been speaking about, I'd love to hear from you. So you know how to do it. You know how to raise your hands electronically, and then we'll call on you, and just keep your questions really brief or your comments really brief so we can get to as many people as possible. And let's just relax and go to essence. Let's see what we're learning about becoming. Yeah. Actually, Roshi, I just looked at my clock. I have no sense of time.
I know.
I'm sorry.
It's all perfect.
Well, I apologize, but
I was just in your trance.
Well, one of the other side effects of my strokes is that it affects my sense of time. I apologize.
Wonderful.
But
wonderful.
Maybe
no need to apologize.
Maybe we can close then in some graceful way. You're good at that.
So, Frank and I, the best part for us is not us, but you. And so we'd love for you going to essence, what are you becoming at this time? What is yours and what can you let go of? What do you want to let go of? And what lessons are you learning? Yeah. What are the big pieces that are like platforms, if you will, for your wisdom? Or it can even be a little piece that becomes, if you will, the seed for your wisdom. And as Frank said, we'd love to just have a little bit of live interaction with you. Almost 900 people online. Hi, everybody. And just raise your hand. And Noah is brilliant at, okay, 7 people have raised their hands. Wonderful.
Yeah, let's just call in a couple and see what we can discover. Who's the first one, Noah? Christine, okay.
Yes,
Christine.
hello. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, fine. Go ahead.
I am right here at my mother's hospital bed. She has only a few days to live. Bonsoir, madame. Okay, je vous montre, maman. I'm showing you my mother, and I will have to make a decision whether I want to keep her alive, but in low quality life, or whether I should let her go. And so it is very hard right now for me to let go of her.
Yeah.
Elle a l'air d'avoir mal, madame.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if I'm speaking French. A nurse just came inside
it's fine.
the room.
It's fine.
I'm gonna step back for a minute so I do not disturb them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, wow, a hard decision there. And Christine, you are becoming, right? You're becoming the decision maker. You're becoming the matriarch now. And I just want to wish you well and encourage you to trust your own good heart. It will be a reliable guide for you. It will not let you down. It will not let you down. Trust your good heart. Okay, Christine.
How can she, my heart tells me, how can she possibly live amputated in a hospice? She was very, very independent, and she will not bear it. So I think I have to let her go.
Yeah, she is becoming also. She is becoming new also. She is not the same person she was before. And so everyone has to adjust to that. Yeah. Okay, Christine, I'm going to...
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
And for also bringing us so close into your mother's powerful transition.
Yeah.
And just know that all those people who are online with us right now are holding you and her.
Okay. Do we have time for someone else briefly? Carolyn. Oh, Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Frank. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Yeah.
What's on your heart and mind?
So, very quickly, the relationship, when you speak of essence, a question comes to mind for me. What is the relationship of essence to emptiness?
Oh, well, essence is empty.
Right.
Essence is empty, but empty is a hard word in our culture, and so people get a little tangled up with it. Our friend Kaz Tanahashi often speaks about it as boundlessness. I like to just call it unselfishness. No, just unselfishness. So the nature of our nature, the nature of our essence is unselfish. We could think of it that way. Okay?
I kind of like emptiness better, but okay.
Okay, go ahead. Stick with it then.
To talk about this.
All right.
Thank you.
But I also like how Kaz describes it. He calls it boundlessness.
Yeah. Yeah. Boundless is the boundless nature of our nature.
Exactly. Boundless heart.
Okay. We have time for maybe one more. I don't know.
Yeah, well, Frank, we have another 20 minutes or so.
Oh, okay, good. I'm sorry, Noah.
Yeah, plenty of time. If you
okay, good. So who's next?
Amber. Go ahead.
How about Jill Laurie?
Oh, Roshi, I just called on someone.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Good. Whoever
Amber.
you called on.
And Jill will be next. Yeah, Amber, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I long really much in my heart to know what selfishness is, and I'm aware my I can't become selfish. I don't know in English. And so I wonder, how can I transform my heart in order to know selfishness?
Unselfishness, yeah.
Unselfishness.
Yeah. Roshi, you want to take a...
Well, I always have loved what Norman Fisher wrote. He says enlightenment is basically being unselfish.
Yeah.
And, as we honored Thich Nhat Hanh in this time together, what we begin to understand, being basically unselfish, is to be in this field of interbeing, to understand that we are inhabited by all beings and things, not just our small self, but in relation to our subjectivity. When we expand, it includes everything. So part of the Mahayana key is this, and Mandela realized it at Robben Island, is this capacity to bring his enemies, those who are torturing him, into his personal experience and to see them for who they really are, not just torturers, but as Thich Nhat Hanh said, a wounded Buddha.
You know, Amber, I was just thinking about Christine and her mom, you know, who we saw just a moment ago. And when I know when I was working with folks who are dying, I would try and see myself in them and see them in me. And that was really a way that I think the quality of unselfishness that you're speaking about begins to get cultivated in us. So see yourself in others and see them in you. That's a way to practice, you know. Whether it's the joy of a small being or the pain of a person in hate that's consumed by hatred. Yeah. See yourself in them. See them in you. Okay.
Well, thank you for that question and your answer, Frank.
Okay. Jill was next, wasn't she?
Yes.
Hi, Jill.
Hello. Hi. I wanted to share with all of you. I had the honor of joining online the beautiful ceremony honoring Thich Nhat Hanh from Upaya Institute. And I was so filled with love that right after the service, I instinctively reached over on the side of my face and touched a mole, an ugly black mole that had been there for years. And it came right off in my hands. And so for me, that was just an example of the power of pure love.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I'm becoming is love. And I think that just shows me just how powerful love is, and that that's the answer to everything that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Beautiful. Like I was saying, you know, love supports, it gives rise to manifestation, but also it dissolves. I don't know if it can be everybody else's cure from moles, but maybe, I don't know, maybe you've discovered something new. I certainly know that when we are imbued with love, everything is a little bit more tolerable and workable. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Martha?
Who's Martha? No, I want to also make sure that if we have questions from our Italian speakers or Portuguese speakers, that we include them. Martha,
Hi,
are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I just can't see you, but okay, go ahead.
I can't see me either. Okay, well, on my 86th birthday a couple of weeks ago, I fell on a vacuum cleaner cord and broke my hand. And I broke the little finger where it attaches to the palm. And you can't see this now, but it's all very splinted up. I was taken to the ER by my son and daughter. And anyway, what I wanted to say was, they put a splint on it. That's what human beings could do. They could hold it in place. But the great miracle, and this just strikes me as an enormous miracle, is that my body knows how to build new cells that will heal that bone and give me back my hand.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of so awed by that fact going on in my body right now. I mean, talk about becoming out of grief, out of tragedy. I mean, it wasn't a big tragedy, but it's been hurting a lot for a couple of weeks.
Right.
And I don't know, it just strikes me as so miraculous, and it's exactly what you're talking about.
Wonderful. And I'm glad that it's healing, Martha. Wonderful. And it's kind of what Roshi said, that sometimes, sometimes we experience some really difficult thing, and that gives rise to a new understanding of becoming. Or what Ty said in that short video, that, when we look closely, when we really look closely, we see the aliveness. It's all around us. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing about your body, the incredible aliveness in it. Beautiful.
It's amazing. At 86, my body is working at this.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay.
So Frank, I want to be mindful about time.
Okay. Yeah. You have to be mindful, but I unfortunately can't be. So Should we stop now, Roshi? Should we stop in a minute and just,
I think that we I
because
think
we've
we
gone
should
over.
answer one question from Fabio.
Okay, good.
This is how to start over going through so much suffering that has no end. And I know that what we do still matters, but I often feel collapsed.
Mm. All right, why don't you take a run at that one and I'll follow.
You know, I remember a kind of a joke that is kind of lives with me. It's someone once asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama, well, what do you think about the French Revolution? And His Holiness said, it's too early to tell. But
Yeah.
you know, we don't know. We do not know what the next day or even this afternoon or evening will bring. I think about the Berlin Wall coming down. I think about Obama being elected president. You know, I think about this virus just swamping our globe. So the suffering might feel endless, but part of the reason that we practice is so we develop this metacognitive perspective that allows us to look deeply into what is truth. And what is really true is everything is subject to change. We don't know. And one of the things that I really have always appreciated is this term that was coined by Keats. And the term is negative capability. And he wrote this in a letter to his brothers, George and Tom, in the early 1800s. And he says, can we be in uncertainties, in mysteries, in doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason? So, you know, this negative capability pertains to us developing the capacity to live within the penetralium of mystery or to deal with unanswerable questions, to really sit with not knowing. And my buddy Rebecca Solnit, Joanna Macy, and I have written a lot about hope. And I've coined this term, wise hope, because it's born of radical uncertainty. It's that capacity to really drop into not knowing. And, you know, you ask, how could we really know what's going to happen? And it requires that we open ourselves to what we do not know, what we can't know. And it appears, you know, wise hope appears in this disrupted landscape of radical uncertainty that we're in right now. And, you know, it also gives us the space where we can discover how we can engage to serve. And that, I think, is really important. I'm thinking about some words from Václav Havel, who said, you know, hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. So I wanted to say, bodhisattvas seek difficult situations, and difficult situations seek bodhisattvas. And so I feel that we're in that landscape at this time, you know, of carrying a really heavy load. And how do we have the capacity to carry it? It's in part what Frank spoke to earlier. It's this coming into the realization of the truth of impermanence and coming into the realization of interbeing, of interconnectedness. So I hope that gives you a little bit of feeling for your question.
And you know, if impermanence and becoming are partners, then not knowing and not knowing becomes the practice, right? It becomes the practice. Not knowing and begin again maybe are partners in the practice. Yeah, beautiful.
You know,
Oh,
Frank, I remember something Jack wrote about in Bringing Home the Dharma. You know, he said, he wrote, I hope you're not afraid of suffering. But actually, he didn't say it. He was in Ajahn Chah's monastery. And, you know, he'd just arrived in, you know, the monastery. And Ajahn Chah said, I hope you're not afraid of suffering. And Jack said, well, what do you mean? I came here to meditate and find inner peace and happiness. And then Ajahn Chah explained to Jack, listen, there are two kinds of suffering. The suffering we run from because we are unwilling to face the truth of life. And the suffering that comes when we're willing to stop running from the sorrows and difficulties of the world. And then Ajahn Chah caps it, the second kind of suffering will lead you to freedom. The second kind of suffering will lead you to freedom. It's amazing, those words.
beautiful. You know, I'm conscious of our time, so I want to say one or two things before we end. And that is, first of all, thank you to Upaya. You know, thank you to our partners, of course, in this. But I mean, you know, wow, talk about becoming. I mean, Upaya had made this shift at the beginning of the pandemic to creating this Mahasangha that we are all part of right now. And I'm so grateful for the courage that took and the wherewithal that it has taken to sustain it, you know. And so I really want to thank Upaya, but also I want to ask you please to support Upaya. Noah mentioned this earlier about Dana, and I know we've become accustomed to things that happen on the internet to just be free, but please, please offer your support to Upaya. It is a precious jewel in our culture, and it needs to be protected. You know, it needs to grow and continue to become. Yeah, and so it can only do that with your support, actually. So please, let's express our sense of interbeing by supporting Upaya and with all of your heart and all of your pocketbook.
Frank, that's so kind of you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very involved with the work of Barry Lopez, and there's a beautiful film that recently came out about him. And I just want to finish up some of our exploration about becoming with some reflections from Barry. He said, you know, and I say this to all of you, we must not be held back by a boundary. We must not be stopped by fear. And that's what Lopez said. And I say, you know, really the call is to stand at the edge in order to see the boundless horizon, in order to see this big perspective. Can we do that so that this boundless horizon really becomes visible? And then Barry wrote, he said, the effort of the imagination, and this I feel is key, the effort of the imagination is to turn the boundary into a horizon. Because with a horizon, there's no end for you. The boundary says here and no further. The boundary says here and no further, but the horizon says, welcome, welcome. I think this is the heart of becoming. It is to sit with not knowing, with the perspective of a boundless horizon, with boundless possibilities, and to live that as we serve others.
An exquisite ending. Thank you, Roshi. And we should remind people that this series, Becoming, Being, and Belonging, will continue. I'll do another program with Tara Brock on being in April, and then in late April with Vinnie Ferraro on belonging. So you can please go to the Upaya websites and you can find out when the dates are of those and how to register and such. Roshi, thank you, my friend. So beautiful to be with you.
Oh,
Really
I love
beautiful
you,
to
Frank.
be with you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us, and again, to all the kind beings working behind the scenes to make this look effortless. Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
Noah, Joanne, Bonnie, our Upayans. Thank you. And Frank, I love you. And I so many dear friends.
Goodbye, everyone. Noah, can we just unmute everybody?
Sure. Let me just say thank you so much, Frank and Roshi, and thank you, Frank, for that Donna ask, and you posted the link, and you can find it on the resource page, along with the recording of this, which will be available very shortly after, usually within an hour. And on that recording is also the transcript, which you can download. There have been a lot of requests for the transcript. And if you can't find anything you're looking for, just email us at onlineprograms@upaya.org. Thank you all so much. And I'm gonna ask everyone to unmute and say your goodbyes for now.
Thank you.
Bye to all of you.
Muito obrigada. Obrigada, gente.
Obrigada a todos. Obrigada, Jane.
Um beijo a todos.
Tutti, ciao tutti.
Muito obrigada. Muito obrigada.
Obrigado.
Obrigado, Roshi.
Good sangha there.